Jimi Hendrix Experience performed Hey Joe live for the first time at the Monterey Pop Festival the last night in 1967 to an estimated crowd of 90,000 people. It was the first time the group had performed in America, but when they released a single in America, it didn't go anywhere chart-wise. At the Woodstock Festival in 1969, to a crowd of 80,000 cheering for an encore, Jimi Hendrix Experience performed Hey Joe as the final song of the iconic festival. Two performances at two of the most seminal moments in the 60s counterculture movement, and two big milestones for Jimi Hendrix's career with the Experience. But Jimi didn't write the song, and he wasn't the first to have it enter a chart either. It was so popular, it was performed live so many times and covered by so many people that the origin of its writer has got lost. By the time it reached people's ear via Jimi Hendrix, it already had a long checkered past. Some believe it's much older than any of the origins I'll mention. Some people think it's a traditional song, but at the time it was an original composition and it went on to become a rock standard. William Moses Roberts Jr. or Billy Roberts was the first person to register Hey Joe at the Library of Congress Copyright Office in the United States in 1962. Niella Miller, Billy Roberts' girlfriend, recorded a demo of a song called Baby Please Don't Go to Town in 1962, but she didn't release it. Her claim is that Billy stole for Hey Joe parts of her songs such as the call and response, the repetition of the chords, the chord progression, similarity of the tune in the first line, and theme of a tension between a man and a woman. But Miller didn't release the song on an album until 2009. And her song and the theme, along with the chords, it all seems slightly different. It seems like it's a second in a trilogy of songs. The first of the trilogy goes back to 1953, when Carl Smith had a hit with a country song called Hey Joe. The lyrical theme seems like a prequel to the 1962 registered version of Hey Joe, with one man talking to his friend Joe about how much he finds Joe's girlfriend attractive, and it progresses to him saying that he wants to get with Joe's girl, and then it gets to the point where he's saying that his friendship is ending with Joe because of this girl, because he wants her so bad. He's also saying he's going to steal Joe's girlfriend from Joe. To me it sounds like Joe's girlfriend did end up messing around town, which led to him shooting her and fleeing to Mexico, like in the 1962 registered version of Hey Joe. To me, Niella Miller's Baby Please Don't Go to Town seems like it's stuck in the middle of those two. So you've got Joe and Joe's friend saying that he wants to take the girl, that he finds her attractive, he's going to steal her, ends the relationship. Then you've got Joe begging his girlfriend not to go to town, not to drink gin and beer, and looking at the younger guys, you know. And then the third one, which is the one that Hendrix took from Another Few, sounds like that's what happened. So she ended up going to town, and then Joe's girlfriend was stolen, and Joe got very upset and went and got a gun and shot her. It's a bit extreme, but then he went to Mexico on the run. An artist called Dino Valenti also jumped on that, who wrote Hey Joe bandwagon. So what happened was Johnny Cash was going to Folsom Prison to do his famous performance. In his entourage he had Billy Roberts. So Billy Roberts got talking to Valenti. Valenti managed to convince him to sign the copyright over of Hey Joe to him so that he could be known as a working musician, so that then he could get the money that he'd made from another counterculture anthem, put it all together, because he was a songwriter, and that helped to spring him from prison, and it worked. So he got out, but he didn't sign the copyright of the song back over to Billy Roberts. So what he did, he made a dash for Los Angeles, going to record companies to try and sell this song to a record company, who then could have an artist to cover it, record it, release it, and then he would make more money from that as well. That kind of did work to a degree. American band The Leaves recorded and released a version of Hey Joe, which was probably the fastest, most up-tempo, psychedelic kind of garage rock version of Hey Joe in 1965. Even though it didn't get very high in the charts, it only got to number 31. A lot of other people covered the song as well. Wilson Pickett, Cher. But the tempo for Hendrix' version came from a folk singer called Tim Rose, who did a really chilled version of it. He released that as a single in late 1966. Tim Rose was a quite well-known folk singer-songwriter around the Greenwich Village, New York scene, and he claims that he remembers hearing the song as a child in Florida and singing it, and that's why he says that it is a traditional song, but there's no documentation or proof or anything that stands for that claim. Billy Roberts was also part of that singer-songwriter folk scene in Greenwich Village in New York around the same time that Tim Rose was around there too. And then in 1964, Jimi Hendrix ended up mixing in those circles as well, playing coffee houses around Greenwich Village. In 1966, performing under the name Jimmy James, Jimi Hendrix was in Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, and they added it to the set list when they were performing around the Greenwich Village area. Cafe War in Greenwich Village, New York, which is still there, is one of a few coffee houses that were famous and synonymous with the folk movement in the Greenwich Village area around the end of the 50s, early 60s. Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Woody Allen, Richard Pryor, they all got to hone their early skills at the Cafe War. Folk singers, poets, beatniks, they were all the clientele. Bassist Brian Chandler, also known as Chaz Chandler, from the British group The Animals. He was in the audience one night at the Cafe War when Hendrix was performing, and he did his version of Hey Joe, and instantly Chaz knew that Hendrix had to record it and he had to get him to do it and to release it. So arrangements were made for Chaz to manage Hendrix so that he could get him in the studio to record this version of Hey Joe. Chaz managed to do it. He managed to bring Hendrix to London in 1966, where he joined forces with Noel Redding, bassist, and Mitch Mitchell, the drummer, and they formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And this was the song that started it all for Hendrix. He'd been discharged from the army in 1962, and then worked as a backing musician for the Isley Brothers and Little Richard, and 2 years later he made that move to New York. By October 1966, Chaz, Noel, Mitch and Hendrix had managed to record this version of Hey Joe, and they released it in the October of 1966. By the February of 1967 it had managed to shoot up the charts to number 6, making them an instant sensation. Hey Joe was then more known than it had ever been. Hendrix was carving a reputation out as a performer. And 4 years later he was found dead in the same city where he recorded Hey Joe and that he had called home. Some early versions of the song have an F, C, D, G, A progression. The intro is slightly different. Sometimes it's based around an A, sometimes it's not. It varies in length and varies in tempo a lot. Hendrix's version is much closer to Tim Rose's version or Billy Roberts' version. So they are based around a C, G, D, A minor and E major progression. The intro is definitely lifted from Billy Roberts, as is the outro, but he kind of expanded on them a little bit. Lyrically as well, it's closer to the Tim Rose and Billy Roberts versions. with the infidelity and murder theme, but the standout part of it is what I'm going to show you, which is Hendrix solo, which is purely Hendrix blues. Here you go.